A little over a year ago, Hero introduced the XPulse 200 in the market, and after putting it through a rigorous test, we were pretty impressed with what it managed to achieve. Except for the engine. You see, that engine just didn't have the punch you'd expect from a 200cc motorcycle, and out on the open highway, the performance felt lacking. Which is why we are really curious to find out if the BS6 engine in the 2020 XPulse has finally managed to address that issue.
But before we go any further, let's establish the fact that the difference between the BS4 and BS6 XPulse is purely mechanical, and Hero has not made any cosmetic changes. It has the same tank, lights, and the Enduro bike style mudguard, and its functional design grows in you with the passage of time. However, look closely and you will notice the new exhaust system.
Now, in order to meet BS6 emission norms, Hero had to incorporate another catalytic converter over here, which is why they changed the exhaust pipe routing. In the BS4 motorcycle, the exhaust pipe used to move from around the cylinder head all the way to the end can. But as you can see in the BS6 motorcycle, the exhaust pipe moves from underneath the engine and then up to the high mount end can. Now, despite routing the exhaust in this manner, it hasn't taken a toll on the ground clearance, and the XPulse still manages to offer a healthy 220 Nm.
With that out of the way, let's check out the new engine. But before cranking it up, a look at the specifications. This fuel-injected BS6 engine has the same cubic capacity as the BS4 motor, and it gets an oil cooler as well. However, in the transition to meet new emission norms, it has lost a little power and torque to the BS4 engine. The new engine produces 17.8 horsepower versus the 18.4 horsepower that the previous engine managed. The peak torque is also down from 17.1 Nm to 16.45 Nm. Clearly, on paper at least, there isn't a lot going for the BS6 XPulse. But as they say, the proof of the pudding is in the eating, and the difference in performance in the real world is not night and day. Our test figures show that in the run from 0 to 60 kph, the difference in acceleration times is a mere 0.10 seconds, and even at 90 km an hour, the BS6 model only lags by 0.49 seconds. It's at this point that the gap steadily increases, and the BS6 bike takes an additional 1.49 seconds to hit 100 kph. That is understandable, considering the BS6 XPulse is down on power and is 3 kilograms heavier. But where the engine trumps the previous engine is in the improved refinement.
And that takes care of one of the biggest issues that we've had with the BS4 XPulse. Unlike the previous engine, this new engine feels relatively calm and unstressed at 80 to 85 kmph, and in fact you can also cruise at 100 kmph without any worries. And I think that is a pretty decent pace to keep on our highways.
The new oil cooler surely has helped in this regard, as in theory, oil coolers help in maintaining oil temperature and thereby help the engine perform better, particularly at high revs for sustained periods of time. Beyond the clearly improved refinement, the engine feels noticeably more responsive too. Despite what the acceleration numbers suggest, the BS6 XPulse feels peppier, and there's a greater sense of urgency to the way the power comes in. This has not come at the expense of fuel economy, and the BS6 XPulse 200 returned a healthy 47.2 kpl on the highway, with the figure falling to 40.62 kpl in the city. These fuel economy figures are pretty decent for a 200cc motorcycle, and with a 13-litre fuel tank, it translates to a generous 570 km range, which is plenty for touring. In my books, however, it is the XPulse's newfound highway abilities that I find more exciting.
The fact that one can hold a good pace on the highway will come as music to the ears of those who love to get to their favorite off-road trails in good time. And once the XPulse finds itself in such a lovely environment, is when it truly comes into its own.
Barring the engine, the rest of the BS6 XPulse is identical to the BS4 model, which means you get the same brilliant chassis setup, compliant suspension, and perfect ergonomics to handle any off-road terrain. Its friendly demeanor lets novices understand the basics of riding a motorcycle off-road, while the plush ride quality makes the XPulse a nifty tool to tackle pothole-riddled roads that abound during the monsoon season. The XPulse 200 also feels sturdy enough to take a pounding on the trails, as well as wade through deep water crossings. And that is the hallmark of a good adventure motorcycle. If you want to get really serious about riding off-road, Hero will also sell you the XPulse Rally Kit that gets you knobby tires, longer travel suspension, higher ground clearance, a flatter seat, wider foot pegs and handlebar risers, all of which promise to elevate the XPulse experience to another level.
So has the BS6 engine managed to finally address the issues that we had with the XPulse? Well, yes, it is a resounding yes. And while at it, it still remains at a pretty accessible price point, which to me is the icing on top of this cake.